You ever feel like the darkness is watching you back? Not just some poetic language, not just the cold stare of a burnout bulb in an empty hallway. I mean that suffocating, crawling sensation late at night when the only company you've got is a wall of ancient CCTV monitors and your own fraying nerves. I wish someone had warned me that the night doesn't just bring silence. Sometimes it listens. Sometimes it waits. I'm sitting here, graveyard shift, 3 in the morning, screens flickering in front of me like windows into other worlds. There's the soft buzz from an old vending machine, the hum of distant fluorescent lights, and some nights the soft scuttle of something moving just beyond camera range. I used to believe boredom was the worst part of this job. It isn't. Trust me, boredom is a mercy. Here's where I address you directly, because if you're watching this, you must think you like scary stories. Maybe you're looking to waste a few minutes before bed. Maybe you're hoping to feel a chill run down your spine, safe behind your screen. But here's a secret most people never learn. What you're afraid of isn't half as dangerous as what you don't even realize is there. This isn't my first post. Some of you know me. If you don't, let's just say what I'm about to share got me blacklisted from 3 jobs. Management said I was oversharing. They threatened my references. They told me never to talk about what I've seen. Screw that. I'm done pretending none of it happened. I've kept some things back, I won't lie. Not everything belongs in the daylight. But tonight, I'll tell you the stories I dare to share. You'll hear about what waits behind locked doors, what moves in the blind spots, what follows you home. But let's rewind, for your sake and mine. My first encounter was almost normal, almost. You ever see something on a camera and pray it's just a glitch? I wish I could blame it on bad wiring or those cheap dome cameras. With the smudged lenses anything but what it really was. Parking lot B was supposed to be the quietest part of the complex, tucked away behind 2 crumbling warehouse buildings and a line of skeletal poplars. At first, my biggest worry was catching raccoons in the dumpster, not ghosts. My routine was simple. Every hour, walk the perimeter, flashlight in hand, hit the checkpoints, clock in on my phone. I shared shifts with a guy named Ron, middle-aged, always listening to true crime podcasts, had a laugh that sounded like gravel in a blender. We'd sit in the booth together, trading stories about weird customers, bad coffee, who could spot the most rats. I liked those nights. Horror belonged in the stories, not the garage. The first time it happened was subtle, one of those flickers on the screen. A tall, pale blur on camera 3, standing just behind an old Ford with expired plates. I paused, squinted, chalked it up to condensation or bad lighting, hit rewind. Nothing there. Just concrete, rain, and my own reflection in the darkened window. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it, until a few nights later when I saw her again. Same spot. This time, she moved, gliding out from between the cars, not quite walking, not quite floating. Her face was wrong. Blurry, like an overexposed Polaroid. No features, just the suggestion of eyes and an open, endless mouth. My skin prickled. I leaned closer, heart hammering. Ron noticed and smirked. Spooked by shadows already? We get extra pay for chasing ghosts. I tried to laugh, but my voice caught in my throat. I pressed the radio. Anyone outside in Lot B? Silence, just the crackle of static and that endless electrical hum. I watched as the figure drifted toward the exit, blurred even more with each frame. When I went out to check, nothing. No footprints. No sign of the rainwater being disturbed. I chalked it up to fatigue, the peculiar delirium that comes with too many 2 a.m.s and too much caffeine. That would have been the end of it, if not for what happened later that week. Ron called in sick, so I worked solo. About halfway through my shift, the motion alarm went off on camera 3. This time I was ready. I watched the screen. There she was, dead center, between a black pickup and a stack of broken shopping carts. She slowly turned, as if she knew I was watching. And then her head snapped straight toward the camera, toward me. My whole body ran cold. I swear, for a second, we locked eyes through glass and wire. I radioed again, desperation leaking into my voice. Still nothing. The rest of the lot was empty. I grabbed my flashlight, slipped on my jacket, and forced myself down the stairwell and out into that frigid, haunted air. I searched every row, fingers numb, breath catching in my lungs. My boots echoed on wet asphalt. The camera said she'd been right here, but there was nobody. The air was somehow colder, though, and I noticed something weird. The light by Bay 12 flickered, even though our maintenance log said it was brand new. I chalked it up to cheap hardware. Back in the booth, I scoured the recordings, looking for proof. Nothing. The timestamp had been scrubbed, the video replaced by a repeating loop from 2 nights before. I know what I saw, but the official record says otherwise. I asked Ron if he'd ever seen anything strange. He just shrugged, eyes darting away. "You working too much, man. Don't let those night hours get to your head." But there were whispers. Other guards mentioned cold spots, weird interference, electronics failing during graveyard. Everyone laughed it off, except Mrs. O'Connell, the cleaning lady. She'd mutter under her breath, making the sign of the cross when walking past camera 3, eyes never leaving that blind spot. The next shift, I found something propped up under the booth window. A smear of handprint, small, impossibly thin on the glass, perfectly level with where her face would have been. It's as if someone or something wanted me to know I wasn't alone. The next days blurred into each other. I started seeing those pale streaks on other monitors, trailing just out of frame. At home, I'd find smudged prints on my own windows, waking up with a lingering sense that something watched me from the darkness outside. When I brought it up to management, they called me into the office, voices low and clipped. "We need the security tapes for Lot B. All of them." I handed them over, but not before I made a copy. "You'll never see those files online, but believe me, I still have them, buried in a folder deep on a drive I haven't dared to plug in since." Coworkers started treating me like I was crazy, like I was spreading some kind of bad luck. The story stopped. The booth felt colder. Mrs. O'Connell quit, no notice. Even Ron changed, quieter, staring at the monitors with haunted eyes. And then the last shift before I transferred, I saw her one last time. Just me, the echo of static and that dead silence, thumbing through old reports. Glance at monitor 3. There she was again, closer than ever, face pressed to the glass. I wanted to move, wanted to call someone, but I was frozen. The last thing I saw, her reflection grinning back at me, mouth far too wide, teeth shining like broken glass. I thought I could shake it off. Then the next sight was worse. You ever walked somewhere you weren't supposed to and felt reality thin around you? Like the fluorescent lights can only keep the night at bay for so long, and something else is breathing where the walls meet the floor. That's how it was in the tunnels. The second place I worked, they called it a distribution center on the paperwork, but everyone knew it was a half-dead mall sewn together by concrete veins. The bones of old anchor stores, food court husks with empty fountains, long stretches of linoleum patched over with hazard tape. Above ground, it was quiet. Below, there was a network of maintenance tunnels, a place for pipes, cables, and the kind of secrets that stain a job history. Company protocol said we only went down for confirmed alarms, mostly false ones from electrical surges or raccoons chewing through insulation. I'd been briefed, given a set of skeleton keys and a map that looked like it hadn't been updated since dial-up internet was a thing. Security insisted the routes were easy. Follow the blue line on the wall. If you get lost, just keep right. No one mentioned the cold, or that stale, eggy smell that never left your clothes. The first few shifts, I did what I was told. Take the elevator to B2, check the meter readings, ignore the voices when the pipes rattled. But one night, just past midnight, the silent alarm tripped Sector F13, a spot marked in faded ink on my map. I called it in, got static. Only static, except for a faint crackle, something that almost sounded like, "Don't go." Procedural confidence kicked in. You focus on your breathing, check your flashlight, tell yourself you're just earning your paycheck. Years of training, and still nothing could prepare me for what came next. I slipped through the service door, key biting into my palm. The air in the tunnel was thick, pressing close and damp, the sound of my boots muffled by thick layers of dust. I followed the blue line, like they said, but the further I went, the less real it felt. It's hard to describe. The tunnels weren't quite straight walls puckered oddly, corners stretched too far. Every bend held a hush, like a drawn breath. My radio spat out fragments of static, not white noise, but too deliberate, like it was almost words. As I passed one of the old circuit breaker panels, I noticed something out of place. Carved into the paint, under decades of grime, was a strange symbol, a loop intersected by jagged slashes, surrounded by a ring of triangles. I ran my glove over it, and for the briefest instant, I felt a sharp pain in my head, like a static shock behind my eyes. I let go and the pain stopped, but the symbol stuck in my mind, pulsing with a secret rhythm. I kept going, eyes darting over my shoulder, half expecting to see something lurking just at the edge of my flashlight beam. Shadows played tricks, shapes unfurled and recoiled as I moved. Every so often, I'd hear shuffling, distant and wet, or the low moan of pipes cooling in the dark. Sector F-13 was at the far end, a short hallway that should have dead-ended at a wall, but didn't. The blue line twisted here, lifeless, splitting into faint red slashes no one had told me about. My radio hissed again, clearer now, "Don't," and then fractured nonsense. I tried to respond, only to be cut off by a thud echoing from somewhere ahead. I turned the last corner and froze. The flashlight caught on something sprawled on the floor, a bundle of rags, at first glance. Then it moved. Not crawling, not walking, just shifting, as if it were trying to decide what shape to take. The air felt thinner, every cell in my body screaming wrong, go back, but my feet wouldn't move. It made a noise, neither word nor growl. I saw flashes of bone, slick and glistening, a hand that looked human but swollen too large. I stumbled backward, caught on a pipe, nearly dropping my light. The thing rose slow, deliberate, as if enjoying my fear. I tried to scream, but it came out a whisper. In those drained seconds, I noticed more symbols, scrawled on the walls, ceiling, even the floor around the thing, different from the first, more frantic, drawn in something brown-black and sticky. I swear, the line seemed to twitch out of the corner of my eye. The air pulsed, every breath a struggle. I heard knocking, a rhythmic, hollow tapping coming from all directions, echoing off ductwork and endless concrete. Above the sound, my own panicked heartbeat. My mind spun, scraping for anything comforting, procedures, drills, the dumb jokes Ron used to make about werewolves and overtime pay. But nothing helped. Taking my last ounce of common sense, I backed out, slow and deliberate, never turning my back to the thing, muttering every obscenity I knew under my breath. The blue line led me back, but not before I felt the air shift, the oppressive cold trailing behind me like a wet tongue on the nape of my neck. I don't remember reaching the elevator. I pressed the button hard enough to crack the plastic, turned the lock once inside, and watched the doors shutter closed as the tunnel's lights flickered behind me. Up above, the world felt real again, but not right. My radio fell silent. When I checked the logs, the F-13 alarm had never gone off. None of my shifts that night, apparently, had ever happened. No one believed me, of course. Management just shrugged, "You probably tapped the wrong line." But that symbol haunted me. I've seen it under stickers on city buses, half scratched into the paint of janitor closets, burned into the lining of my dreams. I think it followed me. I still hear knocking, sometimes, under my floorboards. It's softer now, but it's always there, reminding me what's beneath every building, every quiet mall, every layer of concrete we call safe. And those symbols, I've seen them elsewhere, too. Some nights, when I'm walking home, I'll catch a glimpse of one half-washed, faint, drawn in places no one should be able to reach. You'd think that would scare me out of the job. I wish it had. The next story is why I never answer calls after midnight. They say curiosity killed the cat, but I saw what happened to Mitchell. You can't unsee that. I think about it every time I walk past a locked door, every time I hear knocking after closing hours. This one started off almost funny. One of those textbook, make sure you don't mess up, training scenarios. You could set your watch by when the weirdos would show up at the north entrance. Some nights it was just drifters or an ex-employee come back to beg for a lost backpack, but it always brought me back to the break room. Sterile tiles, humming soda machine, Mitchell reading the comics section out loud, and the half-static radio tuned to pop songs we all pretended to hate. It was routine until it wasn't. The first night, it was a knock, not pounding, not urgent, just this patient, measured tap. I glanced up at the monitors and saw a shape standing perfectly still in the pool of cheap yellow light thrown out by the overhang. Not moving, hands folded, head slightly cocked to the side the way a dog listens for its name. I got on the intercom. The building's closed. Please come back during office hours. No response. Not even a gesture. 10 seconds passed, then 20. Then the visitor smiled. And it was the kind of smile you feel in your teeth, not your head, like the world needed you to notice it. Mitchell, oblivious, waltzed by holding a bag of chips. "Yo, that guy out there wants in." I shrugged, watching the monitor. "Just another hanger-on. Leave it." We went back and forth, half joking about what kind of trouble he could cause, spinning up jokes about YouTube pranksters. But every so often, my eyes drifted back. The shape never moved. Not a step. Just watched. At midnight sharp, the fire alarm chirped a quick, false signal. It always happened right before something went wrong. Mitchell volunteered to check. "You do the paperwork next time," he smirked. I watched him go, radio clipped to his belt, whistling that same damn jingle he hummed when he was nervous. Here's the thing about procedures: no one really thinks they matter until they do. There's a big rule with graveyard security. Never open the door for anyone at night. Never. Not management, not cops, definitely not visitors. It's there in the handbook, but most guys get cocky. We're the only ones awake, so what's the worst that could happen? I watched the screen. Mitchell's silhouette paused near the door. The visitor turned, no exaggeration here. It was like their body bent wrong, like it was remembering how legs worked. Then the two stood together, one inside, one out. They didn't exchange words. I clearly remember Mitchell putting his hand on the glass and the visitor mirroring him, palm to palm. Perfect symmetry. "Dude, that's not funny." I called into the radio. Silence. Then a voice not Mitchell's scraped out of the speaker on my desk. It shouldn't have been possible. A whisper, maybe a laugh. Could be feedback, right? That's what I told myself. After that, things get blurry. 5 minutes, tops, but it felt longer. The camera feed glitched, frames dropped, static warped the screen, time jumped. When things cleared, Mitchell and the visitor were gone. No trace on the outside, nothing on the tapes. I checked the hallway, the lot, every broom closet. I even called out his name, trying to convince myself it was a prank. Sometimes you want the worst answer just because it means you're not crazy. Here's the kicker, and before you ask, no, the security tapes didn't show anything. Not anything you'd believe. Just static and empty footage, over and over, like the night wanted to erase itself. Afterward, I watched the monitors compulsively for weeks. Rules didn't feel like guidelines. I followed them to the letter, triple locked every exit. That visitor kept coming back. I'd see the shadow on different monitors some nights, always the same time, always alone, always right beneath the burnt-out lamps. A head cocked, an unreadable smile. Never tried the door again, but I'd find things left behind, coins stacked in impossible towers, scrawled symbols I'd seen before in other places. I started wondering, was it the same thing from the tunnels? Had it followed me? Or does every place have its own rules and its own monsters? Management ran an investigation. They told me not to talk about it, said Mitchell must have quit, packed up, gone home. But he never came back for his car. His phone left unlocked on the break room table, screen still playing the last song he queued up. I started talking to the night shift at other sites, skating around the subject. Some laughed, some went quiet. One guy looked at me too long and said, "You ever notice how sometimes the shadows outside just know your name? I'm asking you now, tell me in the comments. Have any of you ever seen a visitor? Not just someone wandering by, but something that wanted in? The rules say never open the door, but what if it's already inside sometimes? Late at night, I wake up sure I heard that knock again. Sometimes, I see a shape outside the window, waiting for me to acknowledge it. People joke on the radio, ghost calls, shadow men. Don't feed the raccoons or the monsters. But I know better now. There's nothing funny about the kind of emptiness a missing person leaves behind. The kind of cold that lingers for weeks after. The kind of smile you can't unsee. There are places they tell you never to patrol alone. This next one, sometimes I wish I'd listened. This one's for the people who swear they see doors where there aren't any. The ones who tug at rusted handles behind staff-only signs and wonder what's beyond. Sometimes you stumble onto an extra hallway, a blank elevator, a stairwell that can't possibly fit between two stores. All the best horror stories begin with, "I shouldn't have gone in." And yeah, I should have known better. The mall was old, built and rebuilt in layers, as if every decade just decided to bury the last. I'd walk past bricked-up storefronts and wonder who had the job of wallpapering over ghosts. Most nights, my job was idiot-proof. Check the exit doors, flash the badge at maintenance, play diplomat for janitorial turf wars. I'd heard the same urban legend a dozen times: if you got lost, follow the exit signs, and you'd always end up somewhere safe until the night the exit signs lied to me. It was slow. The power had flickered during a rainstorm, and my phone's GPS couldn't pick up a signal down in the utility wing. I was about to head back when I noticed it: a narrow door, painted scab red, set into the cinder block wall between a vape shop and an empty nail salon. It shouldn't have been there. I'd memorized the blueprints during training, hazard of being a nerd with anxiety, and I knew every shortcut. It wasn't mapped. No dust on the handle, no sign the hinges had ever squeaked. Of course, I pushed it open. Cold air, unnaturally cold, greeted me. The stairwell wasn't fancy, just poured concrete steps spiraling down, metal rails slick with condensation. The lighting was off. Not emergency bulbs, but slim little lights that seemed to hum, pulsing slightly with each step I took. I chalked it up to adrenaline, dared myself under my breath. No hazard pay is worth this. For the first few flights, it could have been any forgotten maintenance route except the echoes didn't make sense. If I dropped a coin, the cling took too long to return. My radio wouldn't connect, not even static this time, just silence. I called out, half expecting the echo to taunt me. It did, weirdly delayed, as if something had to decide which of my voices to send back. The walls narrowed somehow, each turn growing tighter, the air thick with that coppery, almost sweet smell you find in abandoned freezer rooms. I started noticing things that shouldn't be there. Little scribbles in ballpoint pen, names and dates alternating with sketches of eyes, broken clocks, children's handwriting. At one landing, I saw my own initials impossible because I'd never been here before. The further I went, the more space seemed to bend. Steps doubled back, but the signs overhead claimed I'd only descended one level. Every door I passed was locked, except one at the bottom. I say bottom, but that's a lie. I'd lost count of floors by then. At that door, I heard whispering like dozens of conflicting radio stations at once, snatches of mean laughter, old arguments, my mother yelling my name from upstairs. I tried the handle. It swung open soundlessly, and black air rushed out like the room itself had been holding its breath for a century. Inside, light was wrong. I could see my shadow, but it stretched 3 different directions. There were little alcoves set into the walls, each one holding something personal, a lanyard from my high school, a broken action figure I hadn't seen in decades, a police ID tag that made my chest go tight and cold for reasons I can't explain. I started to feel like this place knew me, had ransacked my dreams or memories for souvenirs. I moved to leave, but the door was gone. Only more stairs now, angling down at a steeper pitch, every sense screaming turn back. That's when the voices sharpened clearer now, not strangers anymore, but people I'd lost. Each word a precision razor. You can't save them. You don't belong. Why did you leave? I shut my eyes. The air pressed cold against my face. I kept walking, but my feet felt heavier, like the stairs wanted to swallow me. At one landing, I found a security badge mine, but aged and corroded, the photo blistered away. I thought of all the stories you hear about people stepping off the map and never showing up again. I wondered if I was one of them now. But then I heard an alarm, far away, then closer, shrill as a fire drill. I told myself, don't listen, but I did follow the sound, clutching my own ID tucked into my shirt like a talisman. The stairwell twisted again, spat me out onto familiar tile, right outside the utility closet. I half collapsed, gasping, but when I looked up, the red door was gone. Only smooth cinder block, the paint barely scuffed, as if no one had ever forced it open. I checked the cameras. No evidence I'd left the main hallway. Motion sensors, silent. Hours passed, but according to the logs, I'd only been gone 7 minutes. My shoes were muddy with red dust like brick, but the mall was poured concrete for 3 blocks in every direction. Nobody believes these stories. Not really. Even I started doubting the worst of it until I went home and emptied my pocket. Found the rotted badge, still warm to the touch. I see it some nights, glinting with an oily sheen, sitting where I know I didn't leave it. The exit signs lied to me, and I think something followed me out. You think that's insane? Wait until you hear about the night they sent me to the old hospital. People say hospitals are haunted by people who died there. I think it's haunted by the things people are afraid to remember. The living take their secrets with them when they leave, but the walls keep everything they fermented. That's what I learned the week they sent me to St. Agnes. St. Agnes was a relic, left to rot on the edge of town. Half of it had been gutted for condos, but the old psych ward was still chained shut, brick windows and iron doors, layers of peeling paint that reeked of antiseptic and mildew. They said my job was simple: watch the contractors, lock up at midnight. Don't let local kids in to tag up the walls. They even joked, don't catch the St. Agnes bug. You might start seeing ghosts. I laughed, because what else can you do? Nightmare over time, right? Hospitals don't scare me, I said. But as soon as the last light went out, the silence hit thick, carnivorous. My footsteps echoed double, as if someone matched pace, just out of sight. My radio couldn't reach the outside, just tossed back static, sharp and uneven like angry whispers. I tried to stay in the main hallway, cracked linoleum the color of old teeth, flickering bulbs overhead, nurses' stations empty, but for scattered clipboards nobody had bothered to clear. The first hour was uneventful. I took pictures for the log, useless shots of moldy walls and broken gurneys. Then I noticed something small, scribbles under the paint that didn't look like normal graffiti. Words bled through in thin, looping hands, help still hear, get out, a child's writing. I told myself it was a prank, but I started avoiding the corners anyway. The longer I walked, the more the place felt wrong. The rooms rearranged themselves, doors I'd marked with post-its opened to unfamiliar hallways. Nurses' stations shifted. I found myself retracing my steps only to end up at locked fire exits and pitch-black bathrooms I hadn't meant to find. My flashlight died for no reason. The backup flickered in and out, pale and anemic. Then the whispering started for real. It wasn't air in the vents. It was words, pushing from inside the walls, sharp and personal as paper cuts. At first, I caught phrases, nonsense, half-remembered lullabies, things my grandmother used to whisper when I wouldn't sleep. Then it got sharper. The walls started calling my name. Not the one on my badge, the one nobody uses anymore. The one only my father called me, voice full of disappointment. I tried to tune it out, hands clamped to my ears, but that only made the sound coil deeper. The place wanted me to listen, to confess something. I passed a cracked mirror and saw a child's reflection behind me, my own face at 8 years old, staring back, eyes wide and pleading, whispering, "You forgot me." I reached out, and the image warped, became something else, mouth stretching wider than should be possible, whispering with my voice, accusing, "You left us here." I stumbled back, heart tripping over itself, and nearly fell into a supply closet I'd walked by a dozen times already. Someone was inside. A shape I couldn't resolve, shadowy and kind in a way that made my skin crawl. It said my name again, low and sweet. It knew everything, every failure, every guilt, every secret I'd stuffed into a box and buried with overtime hours. "It's easier, you know, if you just let go. We can make the pain stop." The deal wasn't words. It was a feeling, comfort, warmth, the promise of sleep without dreams. I saw flashes, my home, quiet, my old dog, not dead, people I'd lost, smiling in rooms filled with golden light. All I had to do was stay. Stay. I can't tell you what the price was, but my stomach turned. I wrenched the door open, half tripping into the hallway. The shadows stretched, thick hands reaching for my legs, the voices sharpening into my ear. "Stay. Don't leave. You can't fix what's broken." My name, again, from every wall, every old phone, scrawled in marker from behind the paint. For a gasp of time it felt like I'd never left, I'd always been there, some other version of me moldering into the floorboards. But I ran. Or maybe something pushed me out, but I kept moving, past wards that looked too new, then too old, into colorless corridors where the ceiling cracked like open mouths. I don't remember what finally broke the loop, maybe it was stubbornness, maybe fear, but I reached the main doors just as dawn bled through filthy glass. Light burned the whispers to a hush. The sound faded suddenly, replaced by the chirping of my neglected phone, the first real thing I'd heard all night. Outside, everything felt thinner, like I'd left something behind on the inside. I got home, checked my jacket, and found a name tag that wasn't mine pinned to my collar, old and brittle, stained with something brown-black, over a name I'd never heard. I burned it, just in case. The smell hasn't left my apartment. Cynics say this job is just locks and lights, but they haven't faced what hides in abandoned wards. They haven't stood nose to nose with their youngest, most wounded self and heard the walls plead for company. I've come to realize we're not alone on the night shift. Some things just pretend to be human. The scariest part of this job isn't what you see. It's what you can't. If you've made it this far, you probably think you know the kind of fear I'm talking about, the kind that lives under your skin, that gets inside your head and makes you second-guess every shadow. You're not wrong. But no one really prepares you for just how thin the line gets, how the night can bleed into your real life, and how if you stare long enough at the dark, sometimes it stares right back. I used to laugh off other guards' spooky claims on the punch clock, call it sleep deprivation and too many vending machine dinners. But there's a reason the old-timers burn sage or leave an extra cup of coffee on a cold console. We act like it's all in good fun, a way to pass the hours, but there's real terror under the rituals. When you tell the same jokes about never letting anyone in, never answering the back entrance, it's because you all know someone who broke the rules, someone who started acting strange or disappeared altogether. I know some of you have theories. I see you in the comments debates about electromagnetic fields, shared hallucinations, shadow people, glitches in reality. Some wild stories, and some so close to things I've seen that it makes me pause before bed. Keep them coming. We're all trying to make sense of the things that don't want to be explained. Maybe if we talk about it enough, the grip they have on us loosens just a little. There are still things I'm not allowed to talk about yet. You get blacklisted fast in this field for causing panic or spreading rumors. But believe me, there are details, hard evidence, missing time, scars that don't heal right. Sometimes my old tapes and logs go missing. Sometimes I wake up and a new door has appeared in my apartment that shouldn't be there. Sometimes I get calls on my dead phone, the screen flickering with numbers that almost spell out words. Night shifts rot away your sense of what's normal. At first, you joke about being a vampire, getting used to the weird sleep and the long, lonely hours. Then you notice the bags under your eyes aren't just from tiredness, and you catch yourself talking to the static in the radio, asking it questions you hope it can't answer. You see the same dreams over and over, endless corridors, faces in windows, alarms going off in places you've never worked. Maybe you start writing everything down, not just because of the paperwork, but to remind yourself what's real and what's left over from the shift. Jaded humor only gets you so far. I tell myself the next post will be a happy one. Had a normal week. Lost only 3 hours. Gained a haunted key. No big deal. But there's always a moment, right before dawn, where the building goes absolutely quiet, quieter than it should. And you realize you haven't heard yourself breathing. In that silence, something waits to be noticed. So drop your stories below. Maybe together we can figure out what's behind these walls on the clock and off. I'm tired of being the only one screaming into the void. Someone once told me the more you talk about these things, the less hold they have. I'm not so sure. Sometimes it feels like telling the story just invites something to listen in. Maybe this is the last time I get to talk to you. If you don't hear from me, you'll know why. If you see a new account pop up posting midnight security stories with my voice, but not my words, don't reply, don't click any links. The other night, I found a set of muddy boot prints leading right up to my bedroom door, prints that matched the ones I saw in those tunnels, the ones no manager ever believed were real. I cleaned them up, but the next day they were back, only wetter. I haven't slept well since. You still want this job? If you hear knocking tonight, don't answer. Not all of us make it till morning. I've been sitting here, telling myself it's just old stories, that nothing can slip through a screen, that the light from my monitors will keep whatever's out there at bay. But something moved behind me. An old patrol badge I locked away weeks ago is lying next to my keyboard, wet with something that smells like earth after rain. The cameras in my living room glitched 2 minutes ago. I rewound the feed, frame by frame, and there's something standing where I should be alone. Its outline is wrong, almost a smear across reality, like a shadow that doesn't know how to stay put. I haven't blinked in minutes. Can't look away. There are things I still haven't told you. Some stories I started to type and never finished. Some secrets that feel too heavy to say out loud. But if you're watching, I hope you'll stick around for what comes next if there's a next. I think it's here with me now. Don't blink. Did you just hear that?